It was the kind of spring evening that made Eastridge feel like heaven on earth. Soft golden light, calm streets, the scent of dogwood trees blooming in yards. The kind of evening when nothing bad should happen. Lily Cartwright was 16. Sweet, bright, shy in crowds but bold when she sang. She had just finished choir practice at First Harmony Church, like she did every Wednesday evening. She waved goodbye to her friends, tucked her music folder under her arm, and started the 15-minute walk home. She always took the same route, down Maple Street, past the old library, across the narrow footbridge over Little Creek, then onto her block, a quiet stretch of Elm Lane. She'd done it dozens of times. But that night, Lily never made it home. Her mother, Margaret Cartwright, began to worry after 30 minutes. It wasn't like Lily to be late. She'd never miss curfew without calling. By the time an hour had passed, Margaret had called Lily's phone 6 times. It went straight to voicemail. She drove the route Lily would have walked twice. Nothing. Just the soft hum of crickets and the occasional porch light flickering on. No Lily. No drop book. No sound. At 9:41 p.m., Margaret called the Eastridge Police Department to report her daughter missing. The officers who showed up were polite but calm. She's probably with a friend, they said. Teenagers get distracted. But Margaret knew. She said later, I felt it in my bones. Something was wrong. That night, neighbors formed a search party. Flashlights swept through fields. Volunteers called Lily's name into the dark. Police drove the perimeter roads. A deputy found her choir folder lying at the edge of the bridge by Little Creek. No blood, no damage, just damp from the grass. It was as if she had been erased from the world in one quiet moment. By midnight, fear had spread through the town. Eastridge hadn't had a major crime in 10 years. People left their doors unlocked. Teenagers walked home alone. Until that night. One neighbor told reporters the next day. It's like she vanished into thin air. There was nothing. No scream. No witness. Just gone. And just like that, a town that believed it was safe wasn't. By sunrise, flyers with Lily Cartwright's face were taped to street poles, store windows, and school walls. A photo taken just weeks before, her smiling gently, holding a birthday cupcake, unaware her face would soon haunt an entire town. The Eastridge Police Department activated their missing persons protocol. Detectives interviewed friends, teachers, and the pastor at First Harmony Church. Nothing suspicious. No fights. No arguments. No signs Lily had planned to run away. The choir director, Mrs. Edna Fulton, described her as kind, polite, and always early. Margaret Cartwright, sleepless and pale, handed over Lily's phone records. Her last text was to her best friend at 8:41 p.m., home in 10. She never arrived. By day 2, helicopters were circling the outskirts of town. Search dogs combed the woods near Little Creek. Volunteers scoured fields and ditches with flashlights and sticks. But still nothing. Not even a torn scrap of clothing. Then a possible clue. A jogger found Lily's hair tie caught on a branch near the edge of the woods. Her family said she wore the same style every day. Tight ponytail, green scrunchie. It matched, but there were no footprints, no signs of a struggle. The police chief, Paul Minter, held a press conference. We are treating this as a potential abduction. We ask the public to remain calm, stay alert, and report anything unusual. But whispers had already begun. Some pointed fingers. Others looked over their shoulders at neighbors they'd known for years. Rumors spread fast in small towns. Some said she was pregnant and ran away. Others claimed a white van was seen near the church. Some blamed her father, though he'd been in another state during her disappearance. One disturbing tip came from a girl at school. Lily had confided weeks earlier that someone was following her home. A man in a red flannel shirt. Middle-aged. Silent. Watching. When pressed for more, the girl said Lily shrugged it off. He's probably just someone walking home, she had said. But now, that seemed impossible to ignore. The FBI arrived on day 5. They combed through Lily's online messages, her school files, and surveillance footage from local businesses. But Eastridge was quiet, almost too quiet. Very few security cameras. Very little data. The town wasn't prepared for this kind of crime. As days passed with no breakthrough, hope began to waver. But Margaret refused to believe her daughter was gone. "She's out there," she told reporters. "I don't care where. I don't care how far. I will find her." And she meant it. It was on the 10th day of Lily's disappearance that Margaret Cartwright found something hidden in the back of her daughter's closet. A spiral-bound journal, the cover faded, with a sticker that read "Private." Margaret almost couldn't bring herself to open it. But she did. And what she read would shake the investigation in a direction no one expected. Lily had been writing about someone. Not by name, never directly, but the entries were full of coded fear. "He was standing across the road again today. I told Mrs. F that I didn't feel safe. She said I was being dramatic. He said if I told anyone, no one would believe me." Margaret handed the diary over to investigators immediately. One page, written just 5 days before Lily vanished, read, "There's a darkness in this town no one sees. I wish someone would listen before it's too late." It didn't take long before eyes turned toward Mrs. Edna Fulton, Lily's longtime choir teacher. Not because of anything she had done, but because of who she had vouched for, her nephew, Craig Fulton. Craig was 28 years old, a part-time maintenance worker at the church, and often present during practices. He'd even walked Lily home once when her mother's car broke down. Lily had mentioned him in passing to friends. Quiet, kind, but weird sometimes. He was brought in for questioning. He claimed he hadn't spoken to Lily in weeks, said he barely knew her. But his phone pinged in the area of Little Creek the night she went missing, just minutes after Lily's last text. When asked why, he said he'd gone for a walk. Alone, no alibi. The town erupted in whispers again. Margaret demanded an arrest, but there was no hard evidence. No DNA, no confession, no body. Then came another twist. A second girl, Rachel King, just 13, came forward. She told her mother that Craig had offered her rides home multiple times after youth group. He said things that made her uncomfortable, like how pretty her singing voice was. Her mother never reported it. "I didn't want to stir anything," she later said. Police tried to build a case, but Craig lawyered up. He was never charged. He moved out of town 2 weeks later, disappeared without a trace. The people of Eastridge divided into two groups: those who believed Craig was guilty, and those who believed the police were chasing shadows. But the whispers never stopped. Even Lily's best friend, Amy, told the press. "We all saw it. How he looked at her. How Lily got quiet when he came near. No one did anything. Not even me." By the third week, the pressure on police had become unbearable. National media had picked up the story. News vans lined the streets. Commentators asked tough questions. Why no arrest? Why no suspect? Why no answers? The Eastridge Police Department, under growing public scrutiny, finally made a move. But it was the wrong one. They arrested Nathan Brooks, a 19-year-old local who had once gone to school with Lily. He was quiet, awkward, and socially isolated. He still lived with his grandmother and spent most of his time online or walking alone through the woods. His only connection to Lily? They had been in the same literature class 2 years earlier. He had written her a poem once. She had kindly turned him down. Police found a collection of Lily's photos saved on Nathan's old laptop. Publicly available ones, choir group shots, school yearbook scans, but it looked suspicious. Worse, he had written an anonymous online comment weeks earlier that read, "Some girls just disappear, and nobody ever knows why." That was enough. With a warrant in hand, they took him into custody. The town breathed a sigh of relief. Too soon. The arrest made headlines. Breakthrough in Lily case. Former classmate detained. Margaret Cartwright, in her pain, believed it too. "He always looked at her strange," she said. But Nathan insisted on his innocence. "I didn't hurt her. I never even talked to her after school. I swear." His grandmother sobbed outside the courthouse. Nathan's a loner, not a killer. The evidence began to fall apart quickly. No DNA, no phone records placing him near the scene. The photos were public. And the online comment? It was written by a different account, traced back to a college IP address out of state. After 6 days, Nathan was released. But the damage was done. His face had been plastered across news stations. He couldn't go back to school. Couldn't walk into town without being called monster. He moved away to live with an uncle. Some say he never recovered. Years later, in an interview, he said, "They were so desperate to find someone to blame, they chose the weird kid. But I lost everything, and they still didn't find Lily." Asterisk. This mistake nearly derailed the investigation permanently. It also caused people to stop talking. Tips dried up. Leads went cold. Trust in law enforcement dissolved. For Margaret, it was another heartbreak. "It wasn't him," she said quietly in a TV interview. "I see that now. But we needed someone to blame. We were drowning." 10 years passed. Eastridge had changed, but not in the way towns usually do. New stores opened, but rarely stayed. Families moved in and out, but the feeling of unease remained. Lily Cartwright's case had faded from headlines, but never from the hearts of those who remembered her. Her mother, Margaret, never left town, never sold the house. She kept Lily's room exactly as it was, bed made, choir trophies still on the shelf, shoes lined up by the closet. Every year on the anniversary, she lit a candle in her front window. It became a quiet tradition in Eastridge. Some followed her lead. Most just watched and said nothing. Then came Jenna Raines, a 34-year-old documentary filmmaker from Chicago who had grown up hearing about the case. She arrived in Eastridge in the spring of 2013 with a camera, a backpack, and one burning question. How does a girl disappear in a town this small, and no one sees it? At first, people were polite but hesitant. They had told the story so many times it felt hollow now. But Jenna didn't ask the usual questions. She wasn't there to exploit. She listened. She interviewed Margaret. She walked the same route Lily had taken. She reviewed old case files, public reports, and local interviews. She stayed in town for weeks, observing quietly and taking notes. And then, something odd happened. Jenna spoke to an old neighbor, Mr. Ellis, who lived near the Little Creek footbridge. He had never been interviewed in the original investigation. Not once. "No one ever knocked on my door," he said. "Guess they thought I wouldn't remember anything." But he did. Mr. Ellis told her that on the night Lily vanished, around 8:45 p.m., he saw something unusual from his window. A black SUV with no plates parked near the bridge. Real shiny. Headlights off. "I thought it was strange, but I figured maybe someone broke down." Asterisk. Jenna took this detail to the current police chief, a younger man named Julian West, who had taken over in 2011. He agreed to reopen the case files and follow the lead. What followed was a new wave of quiet whispers, old guilt, and people who wished the past would stay buried. Jenna's footage began to reveal inconsistencies in the original investigation. Missing reports, overlooked leads, and one officer who had abruptly quit days after Craig Fulton left town. The town began to murmur again. Margaret felt it. It was like Lily had come back, not in body, but in memory. Like she was saying, "Don't forget me." Asterisk. 3 weeks after Jenna Raines reopened old wounds in Eastridge, she received an anonymous note. It was slid under the door of the small cottage she had rented near Maple Ridge. No return address. No name. Just a short, handwritten message. If you want to know where she went, start with the Old Deer Cabin past Hollow Pine Road. Look under the floor. Asterisk. Jenna turned the note over. Nothing else. But she didn't ignore it. She showed it to Chief Julian West, who agreed to take a team into the woods. Not officially, at first. They didn't want to stir the press. They didn't want to raise hope. The next day, they followed the directions. A 2-hour hike off a rarely used hunting trail brought them to it. A collapsed wooden structure, half swallowed by vines and decay. The remnants of what was once a cabin, maybe used decades ago by hunters or squatters. Inside, it was silent, dusty, almost untouched by time. The floorboards were rotting, but intact enough to see a heavy trapdoor near the center. West pried it open with a crowbar. The air that escaped was cold and stale. Below was a shallow, dirt-lined pit, barely large enough for someone to lie down in. And inside they found it, a torn green scrunchie, a rusted music-charmed necklace engraved LC, an old flannel shirt, red, a small notebook with the cover ripped off, pages filled with desperate handwriting, scratched in pencil. The DNA results took 2 weeks, but Margaret already knew. The items belonged to Lily. The handwriting matched samples from her journals. And though her body wasn't there, the evidence was enough. Enough to confirm what the town feared most. Lily had been kept there. The cabin had no electricity, no water, no windows, just one tiny exit and an old rope nailed to the wall. Investigators said it was likely she had been held there for days, maybe longer, then moved, maybe killed, maybe not. No one knew who used the cabin. It wasn't registered to anyone. The land had been sold off years ago by a logging company. The deed history was vague, incomplete. But one name surfaced again, Craig Fulton. He had gone hunting on that land as a teenager with his uncle. A property line map confirmed it. He knew the area well. Still, there was no solid proof that Craig had returned there. He was gone. No address. No trace. No justice. But Margaret didn't need a trial to believe. She stood at the edge of the clearing, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "You were here. I knew you were somewhere. I just didn't know where." Asterisk. After the cabin was discovered, things in Eastridge shifted. The media returned. Headlines flared again. Evidence found in cold case of Lily Cartwright. National reporters flocked back in, but this time it wasn't noise. It was grief. And for the first time in 10 years, Chief Julian West opened an internal investigation into the original handling of Lily's case. What he found was chilling. A police report from the night Lily disappeared had been altered, digitally edited 2 days after it was filed. The original report logged a tip from a gas station attendant who claimed to have seen Craig Fulton near Little Creek that evening, pacing, nervous, sweating. But that entry was missing from the official record. Buried. Julian dug deeper and discovered more inconsistencies. A pair of boots found near the woods had never been processed for prints. Surveillance footage from a nearby auto shop, erased without backup. A witness who called in about a black SUV was never followed up with. The reason? One man, Sheriff Howard Fulton, Craig's uncle, the top law enforcement official in Eastridge at the time. He had quietly resigned 2 years after the case went cold, citing health reasons. But in reality, he'd used his position to divert suspicion away from his nephew. Suppressed tips, closed leads, protected family. When confronted with the new findings, Sheriff Fulton, now in his 70s, refused to speak. He passed away from a heart attack 3 weeks later. But in the attic of his home, tucked inside an old gun cabinet, investigators found a locked wooden box. Inside were a small collection of newspaper clippings about Lily's case, a hunting license for Craig dated just weeks before Lily disappeared, and a faded, undeveloped roll of 35mm film. The film was rushed to a lab. What it revealed stunned everyone. One photo showed the old deer cabin, intact, not collapsed, and someone standing outside it. A male figure, back turned, wearing a red flannel shirt and holding a lantern. It was never conclusively proven to be Craig Fulton. But to Margaret, to Julian West, and to Jenna Raines, it was enough. "We finally understood," Jenna said in her documentary. "It wasn't just a girl who vanished. It was a truth buried under loyalty, shame, and silence." Asterisk. The statute of limitations on obstruction had long passed. Craig Fulton was never officially charged. No new arrest was made. But the truth finally had come out. And for Eastridge, that changed everything. The truth, even when incomplete, has power. In Eastridge, it arrived like a slow sunrise. Not all at once, but bright enough to see what had always been hidden. Though no one was arrested, though Craig Fulton had long vanished, the people finally knew. And so did Margaret. She didn't get a body to bury. She didn't get justice in the way the world defines it. But she got something else. She got Lily back, in truth, in memory, in the voice of every person who now spoke her name with reverence, not confusion. The town held a vigil exactly 11 years after Lily's disappearance. It began as a small gathering, just a few neighbors on Elm Lane, holding candles. Then it grew. Hundreds came. People who hadn't spoken in years stood side by side. The church choir, now led by a new director, sang Amazing Grace. And Margaret stood by the bridge where Lily's folder had been found, holding her photo and crying silently. No more posters. No more searching. Just peace. Painful, but finally real. Jenna Raines' documentary, titled The Girl from Eastridge, was released the following spring. It went viral. Millions watched. It sparked a national conversation about small-town investigations, corruption, and the silencing of victims. Viewers from around the world sent letters to Margaret. Some shared their own stories. Others just said, "We remember Lily." In 2015, Margaret founded the Lily Cartwright Foundation, dedicated to helping families of missing persons in underfunded towns. The foundation helps with cold case advocacy, funding private investigators, and counseling. No one should feel what I felt, that their child could disappear and the world would move on, she said. As for Jenna, she left Eastridge but kept in touch. She said the story changed her forever. It taught me that sometimes the deepest crimes aren't just the ones committed in darkness, but the ones we choose to ignore in the light. Asterisk. Lily's case remains officially unsolved. Craig Fulton has never been found, but people no longer speak of her as the girl who went missing. They speak of her as the girl who changed everything. And in a town that once tried to forget, they now remember. Every year, every spring, every time the sun sets on a quiet street, and someone's daughter walks home. She was loved, she mattered, and she is not forgotten. Margaret Cartwright.